Madam President, I stand again in support of our great ally, Israel. The terror and devastation unleashed on Israel by Iran-backed Hamas terrorists has rightly horrified the world. What I'm about to describe is difficult to say and uncomfortable to hear, but it has to be said on the Senate floor. We cannot make this stuff up. The world must know the atrocities that have occurred in Israel. On the morning of Saturday, October 7th, 2023, as families rose to start a new day, make breakfast, or even slowly wake up in their beds, terror approached. Innocent families were murdered in their homes. Babies were killed. Innocent little babies were murdered, and some were ruthlessly beheaded. Children were burned alive. Teenage girls were raped and then burned alive. An elderly wheelchair-bound woman, who was later identified as a Holocaust survivor, was brutally dragged through the streets of Gaza. Children who witnessed the murders of their parents have been kidnapped and are now being held hostage by Hamas. More than 250 young people were savagely murdered while attending a music festival in southern Israel, many shot in the back as they tried to run away. At least 31 Americans have been killed, and more than 1,400 innocent people were killed in Israel, and we have no idea how many are being held hostage by Iran-backed Hamas terrorists in Gaza. The atrocities are too numerous to fully recount, but the images seen will never leave our memories. I was in a photo of Kfar Aza. I visited this kibbutz back. I did an AIPAC trip in Israel back in 2019. At the time, it was full of happy families and children, but it's now silenced, completely silenced by brutality and death. This week, I talked to the individual that gave me the tour of the village, or the kibbutz, and it was a beautiful place. Nice people, happy. Well, I was told, and she's only alive because she was not there. She told me that the family that lives next door to her on the right were murdered. Family on their left were murdered. Family down the street were murdered. I was told that Hamas terrorists set fires to force people out of their homes and safe rooms, savagely murdered innocent Israelis, many shot at close range. She told me that she was talking to her sister, who was in a safe room, and the Hamas terrorists were trying to break in. Fortunately, they weren't able to. Children were shot in front of their parents, and some have been kidnapped to Gaza. Iran-backed Hamas terrorists slaughtered the innocent babies in their beds. I met so many people there just a few years. I met so many happy people there a few short years ago. Now I fear a lot of them are going to be dead. We saw Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst report, quote, "Bodies litter the town of Berea. You can see its complete and total destruction. All the houses are destroyed. Looks like many were blown up with RPGs or other explosives. People were shot and killed in their beds, executed at point-blank range. This is the most horrific thing I've seen. Thomas Hand, who's the father of Emily, an 8-year-old girl, who was killed in Hamas in Berea. Thomas had to wait 2 days before he found out that Emily was killed. I'm a father of 2 daughters and the grandfather of 7 grandchildren. Watching this father speak on television about the murder of his daughter is heart-wrenching. He said to CNN, "They just said we found Emily, and she's dead." And I went, "Yes." And I smiled. This is what he said. He said, "I smiled because that is the best news of the possibilities that I knew." She's either dead or in Gaza. And he said, "If you know anything about what they do to people in Gaza, that is worse than death." Do you know why they murdered Emily and more than 1,400 other Israelis and 31 Americans that these Iran-backed Hamas killers slaughtered? Simply because they were Jewish. They killed them because they hate Jews and want to kill every Jew. It's unimaginable what these families have suffered. We cannot look away. Let's remember, these were Israeli and American families. The atrocities are too numerous to fully recount, but these stories and the images we have all seen will never leave our memories. Not since the Holocaust has the world witnessed such a brutal attack on the Jewish people. Sadly, the Jewish people have endured thousands of years of hate and persecution, but this will not be the end of Israel or the Jewish people. Israel is surrounded by terrorist groups that want it wiped off the face of the earth. I've seen this firsthand during my 5 visits to Israel, which gave me a clear perspective on Israel's proximity to its enemies, Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, and Iran. I want to be clear, Hamas and Hezbollah are not religious groups. They're not a noble political quest for liberty or civil justice. They are terrorist thugs, and they're killers. They're killers who seek to eradicate the Jewish people from this earth, and they are funded and supported by the evil Iranian regime. In August 2021, the Senate voted 99-0 for my amendment to a budget bill to ensure that United States tax dollars do not benefit terrorist organizations such as Hamas. The vote was 99-0. Everyone in this body agrees American taxpayers should never fund Hamas terrorists. Unfortunately, the final text of the bill did not include my language, necessitating further action today. Here's why we need to stop taxpayer funding of terrorist acts. In 2021, Biden's State Department said, quote, "We're going to be working in partnership with the United Nations and the Palestinian Authority to kind of channel aid there in a manner that does its best to go to the people of Gaza," end quote. The official went on to say, quote, "As we've seen in life, as we all know in life, there are no guarantees. But we're going to do everything that we can to ensure that this assistance reaches the people who need it the most," end quote. We all know Hamas controls Gaza. Every dollar that goes to Gaza comes under the control of Hamas, who decides what it's going to do with it. So what I heard from the Biden State Department in 2021 is that the administration can't guarantee that American taxpayer dollars aren't going to fund terrorists and Hamas. The Biden administration thinks the risk of resources going to Hamas terrorists is okay because, quote, "In life, there's no guarantees." I reject that. And I will not leave anything to chance when it comes to preventing U.S. taxpayer money from being sent to the brutal terrorists that have slaughtered so many Israelis and Americans. And we know for a fact that Hamas uses humanitarian aid to support its terrorist acts. Look at this one. This is a humanitarian package. It's a humanitarian UNICEF bag found among the trucks used to carry Iran-backed Hamas terrorists into Israeli towns where they brutally murdered innocent families and burned homes to the ground. I guess there was no guarantee. I've talked to a lot of rabbis in Florida. We have a lot of synagogues, a lot of Chabads in there, and they told me they've seen lots of pictures on Israeli TV of humanitarian rice bags that when people open them, there are bullets in it. The administration must do better and fully control where American taxpayer money is going. We can. We can make sure American taxpayers aren't funding terrorists. That's why I'm again asking that we pass the Stop Taxpayer Funding of Hamas Act. I'm proud to have the support of Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, Mike Braun, Kevin Kramer, and Ted Budd on this bill. What this bill says, it's common sense, is that there's no funds will be authorized for the territory of Gaza till the President certifies to Congress that these funds can be spent without benefiting terrorist organizations. The Stop Taxpayer Funding of Hamas Act also ensures U.S. funds are not authorized for expenditure in the territory of Gaza through any United Nations entity or office unless the President can certify that it is not encouraging or teaching anti-Israel and anti-Semitic ideas and propaganda. Pretty basic. And finally, this bill mandates that the President certify that there are no hostages. We know there's hostages in Gaza. There's no hostages held in Gaza for any terrorist organization. Just this morning, President Biden announced $100 million of U.S. aid to Gaza for Gaza and the West Bank. When Iran-backed Hamas terrorists continue attacks against Israel and hold American hostages in Gaza, I can't think of a more critical time to pass this bill. Let me just finish with something that somebody reminded me today. So I know a family in Florida that they lost their sister-in-law, her husband. I think they were 2 6-year-olds and a 3-year-old. So here's the way it works. So they lost their loved ones, but their government is going to tax them to give money to the Palestinian Authority that gives money to terrorists that died killing their family. You can't make this stuff up.